All right. Good afternoon. Thanks for joining us. This is going to be a great session. This is where the rubber meets the road. Implementation, getting stuff done, and I am glad to have you with us today. I'm glad to be joined by three folks in the field that are really getting stuff done. I've had a chance to hear some of their stories, and I'm really excited for them to share what they're working on and how they're thinking about implementation with you all today. I'm Stephen Rockwell. I'm the founder of HumanServices.AI and iBlueprint.ai. At the outset, and before I go to each of them for their introductions, I just wanted to note that we've got a bunch of resources over here in the right-hand side tab. There are two case studies in particular from organizations who participated with Project Evident in this work and helping sort of formulate the underlying content for this convening today. Towards the bottom there, you're going to see a crisis text line case study and a quill.org case study. They're both around tech debt, tech implementation as it relates to AI. And so they're really worth checking out. With that, let me turn to our panel, and I'm going to have each one of them introduce themselves for a moment, and then we'll get into the conversation. Eduardo.
Right, thank you, Stephen. So, quick intro on myself. I am the Eduardo Hernandez, the EVP of AI Tech Solutions at Perscolas. And Perscolas is a 501c nonprofit based out in the Bronx, but now over 25 cities around the country. And our mission is to bring tech to overlooked communities and otherwise change the face of tech by giving the tools that are necessary for folks to succeed, especially critical now in this age of AI. Back to you, Stephen.
And Michael.
Hi, I'm Michael or Mike Yates. I am the head of AI at Teach for America. Teach for America is a national nonprofit, one of the largest education nonprofits in the United States. And our focus is to recruit, train, and retain the future educator for the future of learning. We basically want to look ahead and see like where is learning going over the next 20 to 50 years and start to build solutions now that help young people understand that teaching can be the best first profession for them and launch their career and their life into what is like work that is meaningful and work that supports people in marginalized communities. So I apply AI to all of that process all over the organization. So whether it's organizational efficiency, like how are we like spending less time to do more tasks, or whether it's like how do we use AI to build cool sneakers that get 11th graders really excited to show up at school the next day. So range, big spectrum for me.
That's great. And I love your bio. It says, I'm the AI guy at the Innovation Lab.
Yeah.
That's nice. And Karl.
Hey, honored to be with both Mike, Eduardo, and you, Stephen. Karl Rectanus. I'm a former teacher and administrator, have been a serial education innovator, leading both for-profit and nonprofit organizations in the past. That's included public-private partnerships with the Gates Foundation around STEM education. It's included helping school districts and states grow their grants. Most previously, I led Learn Platform, founded and led Learn Platform, which was a driver of rapid cycle evidence creation, which obviously Project Evident and the team are amongst the strong partners with that work. That was acquired by Instructure, where I led K-12 and platform strategy globally for the maker of Canvas, one of the largest learning management systems. But in the last few years, I've done a couple things of note that are, I think, relevant. One, I'm the founding chair of the industry council for a group called EdSafe AI, which is run through Innovate Educate, that focuses on how we ensure that AI is safe, accountable, fair, and effective as we use it in education. And most recently, in the last 90 days, I've accepted a new mission to try and help change the trajectory of literacy in the U.S. My team now, I get to lead a great group of folks at Really Great Reading, RGR, one of the OG science of reading organizations, now flipping that into one of the leading literacy outcomes organizations. And certainly as we modernize how we deliver and work to help kids dramatically improve how kids learn to read and catch those students up who are behind, AI is a part of that process. It's a tool set, but it's not the answer. It's just part of how we do education. And so I'm honored to join this conversation with Mike and Eduardo and you and the great group of folks who are joining today. Thanks
so much. And Karl got an extra bonus points for getting OG early into the conversation. Love it. Love it. So what I'd like to do in the course of this conversation is maybe go through the implementation journey. Obviously, a lot of organizations have gone through some of the learning and working on their AI usage policies and all of that, and they're moving into experimentation and piloting. And wondering, like, from your experience, what are some of the questions and or practices that organizations should be asking themselves before launching that first AI pilot? Who wants to go first? Karl, you had some interesting things.
I'm glad to jump in. I think that it's a great question. It's a critical question. It's one that every organization should consider before just throwing any and all data and information into any software. It doesn't really matter if it's AI or not. But I do think there's a couple things. One, and amongst the resources, along with project evidence information, along with the great resources you mentioned, Stephen, from Quill and Crisis Text Line, I'm glad to highlight EdSafe AI's framework. I mentioned it a little bit in the intro, but the idea is that, especially when it comes to education, ensuring that things are safe, that they are and secure, right? That the tools you're using are have a commitment to accountability, right? You have accountability. Your organization has accountability to folks that it's not going to breach any accountability commitments that you've made. That it's fair. I think we know that technology, AI or otherwise, has not always been fair and transparent. Especially not across all backgrounds or demographics or how it engages. And then fundamentally, we should ensure that it's effective, that we're doing these things to solve real problems, not just create shiny new things or move forward. And so that SAFE framework, safe, accountable, fair, and effective, I find really valuable as just sort of an initial checklist. To go through as you activate. And it's amongst the resources, you can find that framework. Any organization can activate that. And for those who are either nonprofit or for-profit, you can engage with EdSafe AI to learn more and learn more from others. Project Evident has been a part of that work as well.
Great.
Eduardo, I don't know, you've got some experience in this space.
Yeah, thank you, Karl. Stephen, do you mind? Should I?
Sure, please.
I was gonna jump in because I think Karl teed it up pretty good. And so one of the things, we've been on this journey for about 2 years, and we were, myself, I worked on the framework with Project Evident, so very familiar with getting the strategy and alignment. And even Perscolas has been on a 1-year transformation journey around data, making sure that we clean it up, it's in a data lake, because in a secure one. All those things is setting up the infrastructure to get your AI for scale ready. However, the one thing I think that I've learned that it's really important, you can still do a lot and start preparing the landscape, which are your people. There is a lot of disinformation and information around AI, right? You've got different leaders saying certain things, and it makes people get nervous. And you can start that education piece, which is really critical. And the one thing I also notice about AI is, especially in the last year, the way you develop with AI, the actual coding tools have taken a huge leap. So you can follow frameworks to develop that, and then takes what's called kind of like a Wizard of Oz approach to AI to get it in front of your users. Because ultimately, as you're building tools, it's very easy to build in a vacuum, and then you like, yeah, I built this great product. You bring it to a team, they're like, who'd you build it for? So one of the important good things about AI is it allows us to prototype UI and use pretty quickly, and you secure that, you get it in front of your pilot groups, you get the feedback while you're doing the data and you're cleaning everything up, so that, and then you have the buy-in from the teams. So when you're ready to bring it all together, you followed the steps, which is much different than, I guess, development in the old days, because I say the old days, right? Like what we were doing like 2 years ago. But it took for a while, and it was very expensive to test a new feature, try a new feature, make a UI change. And that's one of the things that we're able to do now, get that in the hands of folks. So it's coming from both sides. And the last piece I will say is, yeah, change management, education. The other thing that my department is doing is AI fluency across Perscolas, which is 600 staff members. And we are making sure that everybody understands, has a baseline on data governance, privacy before they even touch any tools. And then we're kind of breadcrumbing them tools. We're not going for the 10x tools. Here's how you use, we're Google shop, so here's how you use a Google Gemini gem. Here's how you do this to help your work. So you're slowly getting people up, so that we're hoping when the bigger stuff comes out in a year or two, you've got that adoption in a good place.
That's great. I mean, I'm glad we're starting to, you didn't say it, but there's some vibe coding that I heard in there. So, and I think you laid out some of the, how do we get our teams like ready to be experimenting and piloting, and sort of being on that faster iteration cycle. Really love that. Michael, what are you doing with your team on that front?
Yeah, I mean, love to jump in here. I think at Teach for America, we've been pretty quiet about this narrative, but we started a little earlier than most people did when it comes to generative AI. We've been doing this work around generative AI for around 4-ish years, and like even preparing to start teaching people about what it was before the official release of ChatGPT. We've had a chance to like help build, create, and spin out a platform called PlayLab AI, and I've reached tens of thousands of educators all over the world with that. We started with this idea that building is the ultimate form of learning, and that you had to do this in communities. So communities like EdSafe, like Erin Moat, dear friend of mine, love seeing her all the time. And so we, I mean, literally, I looked at my wife one day and I was like, hey, for the next 2 years, I'm going to be on planes all the time. And so, a couple years later, I'm Premier 1K, and United Airlines knows me all too well. But we made a bet on two things. Was that one is that you had to teach people to build themselves with AI so that they could see the real value. And to do that, you had to demystify what it meant to build with AI. You had to make it radically simple. And so we created, I spent a year basically testing all around the country what is the most exciting form of an AI hackathon that exists. And so I sort of rebuilt what that was. We boiled it down to 90 minutes. We start by doing yoga or making paper airplanes or whatever, to show them that like what you're about to do is very simple. Focused our audience on educators, and like really blitz that space. But I think like what's sort of wrapped up in all of that is like there's a lot of cool things that your organization could do with AI, but there's not a lot of things that you necessarily should be doing with AI right now. Like if it doesn't advance your top line goal in your organization, then it doesn't matter. So, for us, what we call AI dexterity, the ability to use different AI tools and to know when you're going to employ those tools on behalf of your work. For us, that's important because like we're using AI as like a sort of like a better mousetrap, so to speak, to help us at all levels of the Teach for America enterprise. So when we're recruiting on college campuses, we run AI hackathons on college campuses with college students to show them like, hey, this is the type of development that you can expect as a leader at Teach for America. We use AI hackathons during teacher training to show educators, like, here's a tool, we're going to teach you how to use it, and you can use this like day one in your classroom. You can build X, Y, or Z. We do it with staff. We even do it with alumni to re-engage alumni. So we have like that, what we call constituent facing work. And then we have all of the sort of blocking and tackling, which is some of like what Eduardo was talking about. Like there's like just like straight up like buying licenses, figuring out like, governance. One thing that we haven't put in front of our whole staff yet, but I'm really proud that it's coming out, is we created an AI constitution, which is, I mean, if I were to suggest like, hey, what's the thing you should do to make sure that the AI work that you're doing aligns to your top line goals, it's something like that, right? So we have 6 things in that constitution that as an organization, we will not compromise on. And like one of them is equitable usage of AI, right? For example. So it's like, no matter where you are at Teach for America, it doesn't matter if you're in Delaware, doesn't matter if you're in Seattle, Texas, you will adhere to those 6 parts of the Constitution. We'll keep it flexible. We'll give people the ability to rip it to shreds, and we'll update it every 6 weeks if we have to, because the technology is moving so fast. But highly recommend those 2 pieces, like making sure it's aligned to your top line goals, and then creating something that forces people to pay attention to the fact that you're making sure that it's connected to your top line goals.
It's really, really, just to sort of jump off from there, because I think your constitution and everyone sort of aligning to that, understanding and aligning to that as a scale way to get to governance.
Yep.
Will kind of like lead us into this next question around scale. And really, like, even in the private sector, if it's not just the MIT study, the McKinsey study and there's lots of data that says that the pilot and experimenting is not, in general, yielding either the expected impacts and or getting to scale, getting to operational scale. And so this question is like, give us an example, maybe in your own work, about how, like, what are the pieces in place, like the Constitution, that you're putting in to take your pilot, take your experiments, take the training you've done with staff, and really start moving into a scaled implementation.
You want me to go first?
Sure, go for it.
Yeah, I mean,
Okay.
for us, again, I mean, it's been this like multi-year process at Teach for America of figuring out not only like what are our core capabilities, but how do those function in the real world. And at Teach for America, one of the, we organize our enterprise into what we call regions. And regions are smaller, localized teams that sometimes represent a singular city, sometimes they represent multiple states. And what we decided to do was scale up our AI training and innovations through regions as hubs. And so one of the things about me is like, I try to make everything feel very exclusive and feel more sexy than it might be. So we created this program with swag and and all sorts of like fun bells and whistles that make people want to, we actually set a metric, like what is the demand for this work outside of our testing cohort. So we've been, for the last year, we chose 10 regions from around the country, and we said to them, hey, let me come experiment in your backyard. And the result of the experimenting that I will do is I will leave at least one person in your region who understands this work well enough to lead AI strategy for you guys locally. So for us, scale meant using the human beings that we already have access to, and sort of imparting the training that I have been leading for several years into those human beings, and letting them let that work grow locally. I don't necessarily envision a standardized program. There are certain pieces of the program that are standard, but I do think like what AI means in South Dakota must look very different than what it means in San Francisco. And I don't trust myself to build that, but I do trust the staff who are on the ground every day, who work in that local context, to get the training that I have, and to build on top of that training something that's hyper contextual important. So for us, we're scaling up through our regions. Our organization is balkanized in that way to allow us to do that. We also have like structurally, like from I guess from a governance standpoint, I'm fortunate that I don't have to do all of that alone. We have what we call the AI Center of Excellence at Teach for America, and that includes our Chief Digital Technology Officer and someone from our digital technology team who can handle like licensing. Like I don't want to think about how much Claude Code costs. I don't. But we have people that do that and that make sure that we're in compliance in that way. If you let me, I'll spend all the money. Not having to do it alone is also a big.
I mean, I think what I hear you saying as part of a scale strategy is that you've set the governance parameters in your constitution. You've done sort of broad-based training, but you are letting sort of local context, local needs drive the AI use cases. And so essentially everyone here has got some scale already to the work that they're doing, and and you're introducing a set of strategies into that scaled organization. That's really fascinating. Eduardo, what's your take on sort of this? How are you thinking about scale of AI projects in your work?
So one, I'm gonna make some demands for some more staff because I like the way Michael's got this. Like, oh, I'm the guy worrying about the Claude Code usage also doing that. But I will say I'm glad we're following a very similar strategy as Michael. Like, even a couple of years ago, I used to lead our curriculum team, and when AI really became mainstream, we set up the initial pillars of what we will or will not do. Right, that is kind of like our, maybe not a formal name like constitution, but that adds to that governance piece. But the big thing that I'd like to mention is we have also, in that fluency work, we've gamified it. We've created a leaderboard, and in order for like folks to get to AI enabled and AI fluent, we're giving you trophies. We want the whole Xbox achievement route kind of thing, right? We're working on the badging. You get like and eventually we'll do gift card. We're really trying to make it fun, and and we split it not just on attending amazing like events like these or others that you just listen informationally, but part of you reaching a certain level, you have to build something, let's say, and present it, and you get certain amount of points, and that gives you practice with doing the actual thing. So similar to what Michael is mentioning, except for our things, it's functional teams. That's what we learned. We don't want to build. I have a curriculum background, great, but I really don't know what HR uses or what marketing uses, or so we're empowering them, those departments, and my team is working with them. Yep, give us the ideas, follow the frameworks, and I guess our form of the Constitution while you're doing things, because you're the experts, not us. And then hopefully we give you that structure and we can scale it. But again, we're going to reward you. We're going to reward you by giving you those. Well, they won't really know, but the Claude for nonprofit credit, or giving you extra tools that we can do the things for you. And then we add the expertise. Our engineers will harden it, make sure that we're following all sorts of PII, and we want to really encourage ideas, because I feel like why a lot of these projects fail. Well, I think they tried to do too much, and they're being built, at least the initial batch were built by techs without the implementation, without the actual, what problem are you solving? Do you actually need AI to solve the problem? Because one of the things we're finding too is we're using Claude Code, sure, to develop a solution, but we don't actually need the AI to solve, like they don't have to use AI in the solution, is my point. Because these are problems that they had in their teams even before AI, but they just had no way to really resolve it. So the way we can add AI is, let us help you, use Claude Code. Let's follow our best things, or Codex, or whatever it may be. Build a solution for your team. Great. You actually don't have any AI in your code base at all. The only thing that the AI was used for was to build it. So we're starting to see that also.
Yeah, I can
That's
delve a
excellent.
little bit on that.
Go
I
for it,
think
Karl.
love the idea of the Constitution. This idea of like, what are you trying to solve is really critical. And I know that for organizations that I've been engaged with, that have very differing levels of even, I joke that sometimes people can't spell AI yet, and then you've got others who are, coding. And so, what we found, and I'm going to outline one tool that I find really helpful, which is called fail tests. The framework to think about this that I found is that we conflate a lot of things with AI. A lot of times people are talking about, re-engineering, chromosomal, X, Y's, and Z's, or, but they're also talking about, it's so much faster. We can just do it without doing it. And so what we found was you can sort of bucket both things into either efficiency, that's usually process oriented, type stuff, doing the things we've been doing, or maybe things we didn't have time to do, more effectively in an automated way without having to engage the same way. And that can be exponential. And then you've got this innovation bucket, and that innovation is sort of net new things we couldn't do before, might be closer to product innovations. As Eduardo mentioned, like you might not have the AI in the thing, but what he just assigned was, outlined was an efficiency. He used Claude to code it, but it wasn't like he had created an AI tool to, build robots differently than have been built. But those two things sort of get conflated. So we highlight like efficiency or innovation, and then we define a whole slew of outcomes that we care about: saving teachers time, helping students learn foundational skills, saving our team time, saving money, improving, job happiness, all sorts of outcomes. And usually those two things, wherever you're focused, will drive one of those or multiple of those outcomes, right? And so being able to say, hey, I think we can increase teacher, positivity and time on task if we automated this process and we want to do this thing, et cetera. So the fail test is, rather than saying, as you pilot, rather than saying, what does success look like? So, hey, we're going to do this and we want to save, we think we can save 1,000 hours for teachers across, one of Mike's regions or two of Mike's regions. Rather than saying, hey, we're going to go save 1,000 hours, we say, hey, we're willing to invest 25 hours of our collective time. And if it doesn't save 5 hours, it's a failure. It didn't work. It's not good enough, right? Or 10 hours or whatever the number is. But we don't put a governor or an expectation on what success looks like. We just decide how much are we willing to invest and what level of success would allow us or encourage us, give us the conviction. Confidence is what you feel externally. You can fake confidence. Conviction is what you feel internally. What would give us conviction that this is working, that we should put more into it, right? And so two frameworks to consider the way we think about it. One is, are we really focused on process or efficiency, or product innovation? And to what end? What outcome are we trying to change? Once we know that, then the question is, okay, what's the fail test? What are we willing to invest in this pilot? And how would we know it fails? Like, okay, if it didn't save 5 hours, like, let's not do this anymore. But if it did, and to Mike's point earlier, you might be doing these things already. So you might know exactly where, if it doesn't do it any faster or any better, like, go back to the human thing, like, do that. But this idea of fail testing can be really helpful, I think, because every once in a while you do accidentally save 1,000 hours before you even realize it. But you feel good about it, as opposed to if you'd save 900 hours instead of 1,000. Is that really a failure? No, that's still a success. It helps you think about how to invest in this.
Karl, can I ask you a question about this brilliant concept of a fail test? I assume you apply it multiple times, like as you go, like it's almost like you set up some decision gates. Could you just, as you're sort of piloting and then moving into scale and implementation, how do you apply that fail test, iteratively, I guess is the question.
Sure. Yeah. So really a fail test is a basis of sort of defining what your level of investment is at this point to learn something new, right? And then you're deciding what would give you enough conviction to validate investing even more. So you might think about those in financial terms, or you might say, hey, we're going to take half of the day of the leadership team meeting to do training, et cetera. And you may say, hey, and if the leadership team doesn't activate in the next month at least one new dashboard, or they can't point to one thing in their department, then we need to decide if we're going to invest more in the same way, or maybe we learned something through that process and we saw, oh, we got a few high flyers and we got a few laggards. And so we need to invest in a different way for these folks. But these others, we want to turn the screws a little bit hard. We want to invest the same way, but more, right?
Mm.
And so the idea is that you don't know what you don't know, and that there's a steady state. And so rather than thinking you have to have all the answers, right now, it removes the idea from the leadership team that like, this isn't working for me. And you lower the bar and figure out what the bar is you need to get, over, as opposed, and then say, okay, well, based on that, I'm willing to invest even more. And perhaps Eduardo should now, if he's spending this much time, figuring out Claude Code, credits and who's going to where and whatever, actually, it might be a good investment to invest in a person to do that, so that he can double down on the training and development he's doing across 900 employees and getting them exponentially, moving in the right way. It just helps simplify, I think, the idea of for folks to define, what am I willing to invest right now? And when I learn something, how will I have conviction that the next investment I make is worthwhile?
That's great. Thanks, Karl, for answering my follow-up. And I have a sort of similar question for all of us. That, and it's come up in some of the other sessions, and we just all know this, being in this field. But like, AI is rapidly evolving, right? By the time you've got something conceived to it's implemented, 9 months later, the model's changed 3 times. And so, how are you all sort of working with your teams to implement with those sort of rapid evolution cycles? And what's it going to look like here for your teams over the next year, similarly on that front?
Well, I think, Stephen, so I think that it's a multi-pronged question, right? So
Mhm.
there are people like my engineers and myself who care that the models are changing and there's additional things, right? But for the everyday user, unless it's a feature that adds functionality, doesn't necessarily impact their day-to-day, right? If they had a problem they were trying to solve, we built something, let's just say in this case, like, let's go down that hole because we've been talking about that. We built the tool using AI to give them functionality on something. Let's say the model gets improved, and now they add something that they didn't have before. Okay, now it just becomes like a feature set, just like in traditional. You go back to your teams and you're like, hey, would this feature actually be useful? If not, let's not try to feed it that way, right? I think one of the big things though is cost. And I think the engineers and the development, that is where I think the biggest leap that is going to happen in the next year, right? Like, one of the things we're exploring is potentially building small language models on top of the large language models to do specific things. So that's engineer talk, right? Most people don't really care about that, but from the CFO cares, because that cost is going to come down, right? We do all know from a perspective that AI companies, they're kind of in debt with these credits, right? Like, they're getting everybody using it. We're all using it, but eventually the costs will go up. So if you embed the AI into applications, you're going to have to figure out a way to keep those things actually keep the lights on, right? So that's kind of like the things that we're thinking about scale. What processes do we have to change it from Claude to Gemini to OpenAI? Because of a couple of things, right? We for ourselves, we're a nonprofit. We speak to Anthropic, we speak to OpenAI. If someone, wants to give us $1 million in credits, one of my jobs is going to be like, okay, I got to figure out how to kind of do this, right? But your end users don't really care. And honestly, as long as you're doing the work correctly and the functionality of all major models is it's pretty much there, the three models, right? So I think you have to kind of look at it that way. That there's the cost with
Mhm.
the engineers, and then there's the use cases. Those aren't going to change, except that, hey, new bells and whistles. You remember when Notebook LM came out, and everybody was like, "Oh my god!" and and now everybody wants to use it, and then Sora came out, and then Anthropic released a whole bunch of stuff, and like, hey, what do I use? So I think that everyday users, getting them practice with what they're using and what you've built for them, is going to go further than us
Mhm.
chasing the tail on the new innovation and what's coming, at least for the everyday user.
It's really helpful. Sort of who's paying attention to what, and what do you have to pay attention to, and having the technical team maybe on a different cycle on that than your everyday user. It's really useful. Michael, how would you answer this question? You've got a maker space in some ways, and beyond sort of the model changes, we've got agents coming onto the scene, we've got tools, skills. Like, how are you thinking about how you're introducing those changes, and sort of what's it look like over the next year?
Yeah, I mean, I think we've just become much bigger on um, practice and much bigger on turning consumers into creators and big on principles as opposed to policies, because policies become set in stone and principles can be flexible. We like to be tool agnostic because exactly what Eduardo was talking about. Like, I tell people all the time, like, welcome to the Silicon Valley arms race. You're now living inside of it. Like Claude's gonna win for 6 months, and then OpenAI will edge them out, and like you'll see this over and over. And so we like to teach like principles of AI. That's why that's why we sort of helped construct and shape Playlab AI the way it is. If you've never used or heard of Playlab, it's essentially a wrapper on top of any large language model. So we just teach people the fundamentals of prompting. We teach people the fundamentals of using AI for basic productivity so that you can use any AI platform, no matter what the one is for the day. I think the other thing is like that for us, we're really big on both building the like technical dexterity of our like staff, like the people using the tools, but also building out the infrastructure that is like much needed internally. So we've got our internal systems and our actual engineers, like literally staffed up. Our biggest team at Teach for America is our digital and technology team, because they need to be. They need to be in terms of governance. They need to be in terms of IT, in terms of building like actual sustainable internal solutions. The other thing that we need though is we don't need to stress that team out by having millions and millions of tickets from all over the org. So we want to equip everybody else with the baseline knowledge to say like, no, actually, like if you need something to help you read or sift through emails, like you are capable of creating that solution on your own. So sort of the teach them how to fish at the same time, as we're building out I guess a brand new fishing boat. Um, but I mean that's kind of the way that we approach it.
That's great. Ooh, I just want to encourage folks to leverage the Q&A. We do have a couple questions, and I'm going to move to that. We just have 6 or 7 minutes here. The if I could put these two questions together that are here, it's really to me around scoping, and how are you thinking about scoping the problem. Eduardo, I heard you say this earlier about like AI might not always be the right tool, for example. Scoping the problem. What do folks normally get wrong in the scoping if they're looking at an AI solution? And sort of how do you scope AI into the sort of product and or workflow efficiency decision making process?
So I think part of this is leveraging what Karl was mentioning too, about what are you doing? Is it an efficiency play? Like, are my engineers we're going to build an efficiency tool that's going to increase the HR department, something that they're doing. Great. Before we would have to develop it, it'd be a long scope of work, and it would take like a year and a half to build a tool, just something like that, right? Or, okay, we understand the needs of this team. The engineers can look at the abilities that they have with the coding tools, and then following our frameworks, okay, we can actually get a solution for them. Is that the play? But you have to look at, and I'm going to answer the part of this, how big a solution could be. One of the things we look at is there's the 2x, well, it's kind of three things. It's like 2x efficiency, 10x, and then even 100x, right? So the 100x are the bigger 10x, 100x, bigger organizational shift projects that you're not doing in this kind of, it sounds a little vibe coding like the 2x ones. You're just trying to get the ideas. The 10x, 100x, you're much more looking at doing a deeper requirements gathering. Like one of the examples in our organization is, and so we use, we do a lot of training, and we use Instructure and Canvas. But as we're doing training right now, we have 30 years of experience. We're like, how can we leverage AI to help our learners and our instructors? What tools would be beneficial for them? Like, how do we know learners that are falling behind in class? And how do we, in short, we all had Canvas, Blackboard, can manually look at these things. This is what our instructors are doing. It's an expensive use of their time, which they could be doing something else. So our big 100x project here is actually trying to build an AI native LMS from the ground up, that we can look at all these different data points from our learners, engagement with instructors, virtual, they're coming in person, they're doing labs, they're doing homeworks, and then leveraging reasoning models to give us suggestions on, Stephen missed class last week, but also missed 2 assignments. But 2 weeks ago, he was fine, and his grades were slightly higher 2 weeks ago. It's like giving that analytic skill to our teams. Now, again, human in the loop, not trying to, this is just something to empower our instructors and our other staff members that, check in on Stephen. Stuff like this, could it have been done before this kind of agentic AI kind of tooling? And that's, you talked about the agents, right? That's kind of where this comes in. Could it have been done before? Probably, but it was very expensive and very, it just was too resource intensive. When we've looked at our efficiencies and our gains, we're seeing that if we get this right, it could potentially lead to a better experience for our learners. But again, when we launch, where we're doing a pilot with our alumni, is this actually working? Do you like our application? Do you like how we were doing it before? So this is it's a big shot. It's a 10x, 10 to 100x, but you only do 1 or 2 of those at the org level. At least for us, we're doing 1. The rest of them are the incremental ones. Because, again, this is much more of a traditional.
Yeah. I mean, I think that's really useful to think about, that maybe there's 1 or 2 big bets, but they're built off of, and there's lots of other sort of smaller things going on. Anyone else want to handle this one? Because we've just got like another minute or 2 left.
Yeah, I'll build on this quickly just to say there's a lot of breathless, like AI changes everything. And the reality is it doesn't change everything. And there's things that we know and humans are involved. And so here's an example for us. We are, we're a product, we have a product organization that thinks about, who's going to be the ideal user, what outcomes are we trying to get? What's the cost? How are we going to do that? So this is a whole thing that we know. And by the way, we got to get it ready to, whether it's sell it or adopt it or use it. Like there's all these processes that have been set up for that. Well, it turns out that's exactly what we're talking about for AI, and so here in our organization, just like we would have a swim lane for, learning to read, our instructional solutions for early grades, or our intervention or our professional learning, we have a swim lane for our enterprise systems. We've never had this before, but essentially and there'll be a product manager who sort of owns what are all the things that people want, and the customers are not external. It's the Michaels and the Eduardos and the Karls and the Stevens who are like, I think I can do this thing or what have you. And by the way, that could help all the other departments. And so that product manager sort of ranks what needs to happen and what could happen and have the most positive impact. And it turns out that we can offload these contractors and lower our cost if we, streamline this, and then we dedicate some engineering time to it. And so as an organization, rather than say, hey, we're going to go do AI on the side, or we're going to try to do all the things, we said, actually, let's allocate some product management. Let's put a swim lane here. And we know the outcomes that we want to drive. Let's prioritize this. You get customer feedback. You do all of those things in our product organization the way we do it. And then we're allocating some engineering time rather than expecting all of our managers and teams to become engineers. We're saying, hey, it seems like somebody should have fixed that. And this goes along with this question around formally sharing best practices, which is it allows us to start to say, actually, we've noticed some patterns. One of the patterns we've noticed this week, and I'm interested to learn from others as we do questions and other things, is we found that a lot of these challenges end up being one of four things: a data question, a reporting question. We have the data, but the reporting in the system doesn't give it to us. The system itself might have some business rules or other things, or a process issue, right? How the humans are engaging. And a lot of times, without defining that, we're finding that people are trying to solve data questions with process, solutions, or they're doing three different things to solve a system issue, right? And so just being able to formally say, hey, again, norm around the words that we use and how we engage across the organization, but allocate, product and engineering time to, our own enterprise systems like a product has allowed us to, take advantage of that.
That's fantastic. The amount of wisdom I've heard from implementers here in this has just been absolutely incredible. I feel like if you've been with us the whole time, you've heard at least a dozen nuggets of things that you can take back and start thinking about. I just want to thank you all for joining us in the audience, and thank Eduardo and Karl and Michael for sharing that wisdom today. I think there's some notes from Diana here about how if you want to connect with us in the next 15 minutes, we're available to do that. And thanks again. Thanks for joining us, everybody.